reaches of the lake. I'll take you there someday. Spend New Year's Eve once in Times Square. But if it ain't with you, who cares? My password stick from all that we've been through. The best thing that I've seen is you. Oh, when I'm wherever the wind blows, just as long as you are by my side. Oh, when I'm wherever this road leads, just as long as you are here too. Anywhere with you is home. 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 Booked a ride with a cabin in Mumbai, burning up the night.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started in
Lost on a
just
trail
a minute.
in Peru, and I did it all with you. My passport's thick from everything we've done, but I think we've only just begun. Oh, when I go wherever the wind blows, just as long as you are by my side. Oh, when I leave wherever this road leads, just as long as you are here tonight. Anywhere with you is home. 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 And I can drive 1,000 miles if I'm driving there with you. Oh, I can drive the rest of my life if there'll always be us two. Oh, and I'll go wherever the wind blows, just as long as you are by my side. Oh, and I'll go wherever the wind blows, just as long as you are here tonight. Anywhere with you is home.
As the sequence trickling in, we'll get started in about 30 seconds. Welcome, everyone.
Anywhere with you is home. Anywhere with you is home. Anywhere with you is home.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Elisa Kreider. I'm 2010 Virginia Wesleyan graduate and current chair of the VWU Alumni Council. I am delighted to have you all join us today. This is going to be an exciting event. But before I introduce our guest, just a few quick housekeeping items. One, mute your mic. I think most of you have already done so. And then recommend you set your view to active speaker view. That way you can see Chavon and hear her presentation and all that. That's at the top right. Just select speaker view. And then if you have a question, please put it in the chat feature. We're going to have a couple Q&A back and forth with Chavon, but then we really want to hear your questions. And if we need to go over the 30-minute mark, we sure can. But just want to be sure you put your questions in the chat so we see them there. And then lastly, this meeting is being recorded just for future Virginia Wesleyan use. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest, Chavon Thomas. She is class of 2011. Chavon is the founder of the Power and Grace Leaders community and show. Her mission is to help women in leadership overcome personal obstacles and break glass ceilings through practical and spiritual teachings about leadership so they can confidently and freely walk in purpose and impact the world by maximizing their unique strengths as leaders. In addition, she is a special education teacher in the public school system at the secondary level. After earning her bachelor's at Virginia Wesleyan, she earned her master's degree in special education and is currently working on obtaining a doctorate in education and Christian leadership from Liberty University. That's wonderful. Chavon, we are honored to have you. And you're a motivational speaker, you're an educator, you're an author, and you're very inspirational to young women everywhere. So we're just honored to have you. So let's go ahead and kick things off. And I'd like to know, how did your family's background and your experience impact your journey?
So my experience in my journey, I always say it was very unorthodox, but it was this beautiful story that was meant for it to just unfold. And so I grew up, I would say definitely in poverty to a degree. I was definitely the student on free or reduced lunch growing up in high school. My parents didn't graduate from college like some others may have a testimony of. That's just not my testimony. And although there were some challenges, like financial challenges. I went to 3 different elementary schools, not because my family was in the military, but literally because we just had to continue to move, because we had to find a place that was affordable. And so unfortunately, there were times where my parents faced eviction. And that was something that I learned about later on in life. I just remember being a kid and so frustrated. Why do we have to move again and again and again? But although I was in this situation, I had these financial circumstances that were beyond my control because I grew up in this family. That's absolutely amazing. What was really beautiful was I just had a different type of mindset. My mindset was to be exceptional in school, do well in school, to be able to go to college, get a degree, and move on from there. And so that was just really in my heart. And my parents encouraged me, they pushed me, they motivated me up until the point where they could not any further. They could not just give me the necessary information and skills, but they told me, make sure you connect with your school personnel so that you can get everything that you need to be successful. And so because of that, I was really put in a great position to connect with the access advisor, as well as my school counselors. My senior year at Princess Anne High School, I actually worked with the school counselor's office. And so it was just really amazing. Before January, I already knew what school I was going to, which was Virginia Wesleyan University, or college at the time. And I was just so excited. And although there were financial challenges that were there and present, I was so determined to make sure through faith and making sure that I did what I needed to do in school, that I would be able to finish at the allotted time, 4 years. I wanted to finish right at the 4-year mark, and I was able to do that. And so no matter what obstacles or challenges that anyone faces in their life, if they have a decision that they choose to make, and a mindset that they are going to make their dreams realities in their lives, that's exactly what will happen. And so that's what happened for me. And so it was very unorthodox, but I got exactly where I needed to be. And even becoming an educator was an unorthodox journey as well, but it's a beautiful one nonetheless.
I think it is too, Chavon, and we appreciate you sharing your story. That's really neat. I think hearing the journey just makes where you are today that much more impressive. Tell me, I love your mission to help youth walk in purpose. Can you elaborate on what walk in purpose means to you and to those you mentor?
Right. So one thing that's really big for me is understanding that your life is impactful, not just for you and even your family, but it can extend beyond that dynamic. And so walking in purpose is really you showing up in your strength. So I'm all about women in leadership. And so John Maxwell always talks about the fact that we have to maximize our strengths. Like, we all have certain gifts, certain talents, certain abilities, and even certain desires that if we are willing to really focus in on those things, we can allow those things to really be manifested in our lives on a level of excellence. And so I just really help to motivate and empower women, and also educate them as it pertains to leadership, for them to really stand in their power position. That's what I like to call it, your power position and your purpose position, and do what it is that you know that there's just something in you that's drawing you to this particular area, this particular place to make impact in the world.
That's fantastic. I know you mentioned John Maxwell. I'm a fan as well. Who else inspires you, Chavon? Who else, do you like to read or listen to podcast wise? Inspire us. Who else should we listen to?
Oh goodness. So I love John Maxwell. I am a big fan also of Miles Monroe. I absolutely love him as well. Other individuals are a lot of faith-based individuals because that's that dynamic, spiritual and practical. And so I love also TD Jakes. And then as it pertains to women, I love Mrs. Brevier as well as John Brevier. They really offer some great insight as it pertains to the growing and developing as a spiritual leader. I also love people like Sarah Jakes as well, Joyce Myers, just a lot of different influences that help me be who I am today.
That's a great list. Do you have any favorite quotes perhaps from John Maxwell or from any of the others that you just referenced?
Oh my goodness. So my absolute favorite quote, I just read a book and I read it for the first time, and it is like almost a mantra of mine. And it's by Miles Monroe. And he literally said, the fact that you are alive today is an indication that the world has something that you need. And that is all things purpose for me, to understand that the fact that you are breathing today, there's something that someone needs. And whether or not they know it yet, it doesn't take away from the fact that there's something in you that the world needs. And so that's one mantra that I have now that I constantly share with different individuals, because it's just understanding that you have something that can literally change someone else's life. You have something to offer the world that can not just change one life, but has the possibility to impact so many more. And so just be willing to find out what that is and go after it. And you'll just be able to see when you look back, like, wow, that was exactly what I was supposed to be doing.
That's great advice. Now, you ended 2020, keep in mind, a very difficult year for all, but you ended that year being an Amazon #1 bestselling list, okay, for your co-authored book, Undeterred, which I have right here. You can't see it because of my virtual screen, but I'm trying to hold it up. But it's fantastic. I'm reading it right now. Thank you, Cammie, for letting me borrow it. But I know this isn't your only book, okay? So can you tell us a little about your journey to being an author and then some of the books you've written? Just elaborate on that.
Right. So it would really have to go back to my faith journey, because it was really me willing to take a risk and do what it is that I felt like God was leading me to do. And so I have several books. So I have one book called Turning High School into a Launchpad. And I'll start with that one just because that book literally was birthed as an educator. And because of my experience with my parents not really having the language of what I would need to do to successfully enter college, I wanted to be able to provide other students with that information, because I knew that there were other students who had a similar story as mine. And so I wanted to be able to provide them with something that they could have a quick guide to really be successful in high school. So I talked to them about mindset. I talked to them about work ethic. I talked to them about access counselors, school counselors. I talked to them about recommendation letters. I talked to them about all of those different things that were really vital and pivotal for helping me transition smoothly from high school to college. So that was a desire of mine, to really be able to kind of go back and help other people, because I was getting parents asking me, what does my student need to do? Because they were like my parents and they just did not have language for what it was that their students needed to do to be able to go to college. And so I wanted to be able to provide that for them. And then I have a devotional called Walking into Destiny. And that devotional is a 30-day devotional based on a blog that God led me to start in 2016. And so from that blog, I created a 30-day devotional of different days that I had shared in that blog. And then I also have a book called The Power of Worship. So the importance of worship. I have a book on that because I wanted to be able to provide people with insight who maybe are new to their faith, or they want to elevate in the area of their worship, to be able to provide them that resource as well. And then I also have a book that I'm a part of, which is called Undeterred, which is the anthology. And so that story really came about because my aunt is the president of the NAACP Virginia Beach chapter. And it was just so amazing that through the things that I do already, she said, I would love for you to be a part of this book. I would love for you to be able to share your story of being undeterred and being willing to get a seat at the table as an educator and be able to have voice in the area of education. And so it was really just a phenomenal opportunity for me. And it was really a blessing because there are other anthologies that I will be a part of in 2021 that I have to pay to be a part of. But this specific anthology that allowed me to become an Amazon #1 bestseller, I did not have any expense whatsoever. And so it was really just a wonderful opportunity to be able to share alongside these other incredible women who are doing incredible things. There are just, a variety of women on all different levels of influence, all different levels of career paths, but they came together and they shared their stories. And so it was my honor to be a part of this project.
Well, much deserved. And did you have an opportunity to meet any of the other ladies, either virtually or in person?
Yes, virtually we did Zoom calls where we were able to connect and share our hearts and why it was such a wonderful opportunity for us to be a part of this anthology and how excited we were. So we really got a chance to get to know one another a little bit more. And so reading the chapters of the other ladies' stories made it just that much more impactful for each and every author as we got to know one another in these Zoom calls.
Awesome. Now, speaking of this virtual world we're all just getting so accustomed to, what advice would you share with current students, as they attend school virtually? These are difficult times for learning. So what advice can you lend to the students?
So I will give you 3 things because these 3 things have literally helped shape my life and my world. And that is, be willing to be committed to what it is that you desire. Be willing to remain consistent in what you've committed to, and be willing to be courageous, because sometimes things that you desire, it can be scary, or there could be environmental things, external environmental things that are happening around you, but be courageous. And as long as you remain committed, as long as you remain consistent, and as long as you remain courageous, you are going to reach whatever goal you have, regardless of whatever hurdles or obstacles you encounter in your life. So just be willing to, I would say, do those 3 things. And then there will be more that come along that journey that will really allow you to yet persevere and be resilient to do what it is that you truly desire to do in the world.
I believe you're currently at Green Run. I hope that's okay for me to share.
Yes.
Saw that on your profile. So tell us about your job. How's that going? And, as a teacher, and what's your experience right now?
Oh, it is very interesting. Just this week, more students came back into the building. And so when it comes to being a leader in any capacity, the reality is you have to be willing to adjust to all changes. And so with this new virtual experience that we are undergoing, it is both new for the teachers, the faculty, all the faculty and staff, as well as the students and the parents. And so as a teacher, we are always just being very mindful of, okay, how are you doing today? How are you navigating? Like, how was last week as we even start the new week? We are always trying to be mindful of where they are mentally, psychologically, because we don't want to just push them, get your work done, get your work done, get your work done, because we understand that this is very uncomfortable for these students. And when you are at home, it's easy to just lay down. It's easily just want to go to sleep at 7:20 a.m. for these students. But just encouraging them along this journey and giving them language for just understanding that sometimes things completely unexpected will happen, and you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to put yourself in position to still make progress. And that's the thing for students, for me, is I want to help you continue to make progress, because there's somewhere you're trying to get. There's somewhere you're trying to go, and don't let things derail you or deter you from what it is that you desire just because something unexpected has happened. And so that progress is happening for the students, even though it's very uncomfortable. And we're trying to make it as comfortable as possible for the students. And what I've found with the team of educators, it has just been really beautiful, the camaraderie that has been birthed through this situation. And so it's really been uncomfortable, challenging in some areas, but it shows the ability to still just be excellent, just still be impactful in what it is that we do as educators.
Thanks for sharing that. What are you planning to accomplish next in your journey?
Oh, wow. I love that. So like I shared before, I said this in a post that I made, the ink of the pen of an author never runs dry. It just never runs out. And so I am actually going to be a part of 3 anthologies this year. And I really love it because it speaks to the new phase of life that I'm in. And so I feel like Undeterred was really a great pathway and a segue to this new level or this new journey that I'm on. So I'm going to be writing a book about my experience as a life coach. I'm going to be in a book specifically about prayer, the importance of prayer. And then I'm also going to be in a book about my story and my journey, things that I've had to overcome to be the woman that I am today. And then I'm also working on a book that's specifically going to be about leadership. And so that book will only be me. So it'll be me just doing a book on my own again. So I'm excited about that. I also launched my first conference for women in leadership last December. It was supposed to be in April, but due to COVID, we had to pivot. And so it was moved to December and it was virtual. It was supposed to be in person originally, but it was virtual, but it was still so powerful. And so I'm excited about doing that again as well. And I'm just excited about continuing to create courses that really empower women to break fear, build their faith, and lead confidently and courageously. And so those are different things that are coming up from me that I'm absolutely excited about.
As you should be. Those are all very awesome things. And we're just excited to support you along your journey here. So look out. We can say we knew Chavon, she's getting famous here. It's amazing. And just kudos to all your good work. Tell us a little bit, like, how do you prepare for a writing project?
A writing project? Oh, well, what I love to do is an outline. I like to think about, okay, what is it that I want to have these individuals who read get a takeaway? Like, what will their takeaway be? So I'm always considering, okay, what is the overall objective of what I'm writing that particular day and that particular moment for anthologies? And then for my book, I outline literally the chapters. So what are the key things that really need to be focused in on for them to be able to get to the necessary takeaways, not just from the overall book, from each overall chapter. So I'm always considering that as well. And then I love to also include my story within everything that I write, because I feel like the transparency, the highs, the lows, that vulnerability is exactly what someone needs to be able to be touched, for their heart to be penetrated, so that they can truly show up in the world and be impactful, because that's the overall objective, for them to read and be transformed so that they can go and be impactful themselves.
That's awesome. Lots of great questions in the chat. Keep them coming. What was the publishing process like for you? Did you self-publish, or do you have experience with published companies? This might be nice for any folks on the call that are thinking about writing their own book.
Yes, so I actually self-published my books. And what's really beautiful about it is, the reason why I decided to self-publish is, while I was working at Green Run High School, I teach English, reading, social skills, and study skills. And so in an English class where I partnered with another general education teacher, because I'm a special education teacher, there was a guest speaker who came in and talked about their self-published book. And I was like, wow, I wanted to be an author for a while, but I always thought that it would be a certain journey, like, let's say J.K. Rowling, right? Where she went through many attempts at trying to get a publisher to pick up her book. And after the 12th publisher, they decided to publish her book. And so I always thought, well, maybe that will be my journey. I'll just have to continue to present. And then hopefully someone will pick up my book and I'll be able to go forward from there. But when that individual came came into that room that day in our English class, it was an English 10 class, and presented about his book and presented about his journey, I said, okay, then that will be my path. That will be my journey. I don't have to wait for a publisher to pick me up. I can choose to create the necessary content that I feel like will be needed for an individual reading this book on a particular topic that I'm going to be discussing. And then I'm going to also team up with others. I did not do it by myself. And so I had someone design my book cover. So I was able to get resources on that, on who is available. I also decided to also get someone to help me when it came to editing as well, because although I have a history major and an English minor, I would not say after writing thousands of words that the grammar is absolutely perfect. That's why you have something called the Writing Center in college, right? And so I definitely teamed up with someone who would be able to edit my writing as well and give me feedback on what it is. And so the first time I paid a pretty penny for, for an editor. But then after that, what I actually did was I teamed up with that amazing English teacher who I had built a relationship with. And so now when I do different books, she actually edits for me. And so it's really just amazing that we're able to collaborate. And I always give her credit as my editor on the books that I actually end up producing.
That's great. And thanks for the Writing Center plug. I spent many hours there too. Yes. It was very helpful. Very helpful. In your latest book, what are the top 3 things that people will take away from reading it? And what kind of feedback have you received from other readers? What are they saying and that they're doing differently now?
Oh goodness. So I love this question. So one thing that you will definitely get from my story is the understanding that what you decided to do and the path that you decided to choose to take has the power to not just change your life and others as well. And so in my chapter of Undeterred, I literally talk about my decision to be impactful for the next generation of leaders. So that was one thing that God revealed to me, is that I know that you focus in on women in leadership, but there is another generation of individuals who will soon be leaders. And so what it is that you're doing and providing as a teacher is preparing them for the role that they will take on very soon in life. And so it shows the importance of making that decision to be impactful, being willing to embrace a path that maybe you did not first decide on, but this is the path that you're on, and really take it and give it your best effort. And so that is what I always share about my unorthodox journey, because after graduating from Virginia Wesleyan, my idea was to become that lawyer. So that was my first desire. I was going to be that attorney. But I will tell you right now, the reason why I had that desire was simply because I grew up in a family where if you were smart, you needed to either be a doctor or a lawyer. Because the thought was, you're African American and you're smart, be this. And so that was my original path. But I was working as a legal assistant after graduating from college, and my desire was to literally, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to study for the LSATs, and I'm going to make this transition into pursuing law. And what ended up happening was that particular location did a downsizing and a movement up north. And so I was one of the ones who was let go. And so during that journey of being let go, I was looking for, of course, new employment. And there was an attorney at the church that I went to, and her husband was a teacher. And she actually was a TA before becoming a lawyer. So she was working as a TA. So I was like, okay, I can listen to her. I'll be a TA for a period, and then I'll transition into law. And so, you know, she was, of course, my inspiration, because it's like, wow, I know a real life African-American attorney who is doing exceptionally well in her field. And so I ended up going for the interview. I got the position and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with educating these students and empowering these students. And so while I was there was a light bulb that went off and that said, this is what you need to be doing. And so then I went ahead, I took the necessary prerequisites and became a provisional licensed educator. And then from there, I went on to get my master's degree in teaching with an emphasis in special education. And it has been a beautiful journey. And I feel like it really prepared the way for being a life coach, just being able to both educate and empower people, because those are the things that I love to do when it comes to life coaching. I'm all about empowering, educating, and elevating women in leadership. And so literally that's what I did as an educator for students. And what I still do right now. And so I always talk about that unorthodox journey that I took, and so it really just allows you to say, okay, if I have a change of course, it's okay. Go for it. Go after it, because this is what you desire to do. It was no longer me being what someone else desired for me to be, but it was me finding out what I desired and going after that. And so that's what I did. And that's where I am today. So it's really just embracing who you are, embracing what you desire, and really going after it, having the faith for it, and just watching it blossom.
Thank you, Chavon.
You're welcome.
And I'm just smiling too, listening to your amazing story and thinking, we're like kindred spirits because we have so much in common. I too got my start at a law firm as a legal assistant, and where I never got into education, hope to one day. Both my parents were special education teachers. So I just think that's neat. That's really neat. Well, I have a couple really fun questions here in the chat, but I wanted to give you a couple minutes if there was anything you wanted to tell the group that we haven't addressed in our questions just yet.
Well, I feel like a lot of the things that I was looking forward to sharing, I've shared through your amazing questions, Elisa. So, it's just really making that decision to be impactful, that your life and what it is that you decide to do, it is not just for you. It's not even just for those directly connected to you. There's a possibility that you can impact many, many lives. And so it's just about you making that decision, making that choice to be, like I said, committed, consistent, and courageous, and just see where it all takes you.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. All right. A couple of fun questions as we wrap up. Who would be your favorite famous person to have dinner with?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely Michelle Obama.
Oh, yes.
I love her so much. I read her book, Becoming, and reading her book, I got even further language and empowerment. She talked about in her book how there were moments, even though she was experiencing some success in her career, there were moments where she felt like, am I enough? She will always come back to that question, am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough? And that was a question that I often had for myself as well. Fear always made me feel like, am I really measuring up to other people's standards? Am I measuring up to my even standards that I place on myself? Do I have the ability to be impactful, right? So it was always this thought that was going in my mind, am I enough? And I made a decision through Becoming that I am enough. And what I love about the story Becoming is it also gave me language for understanding that I am who I am now, and I am yet evolving and transforming into who I will have the pleasure of being in the future. And so it's really that understanding that really encouraged me. And so to be able to talk with her about her book, about her journey, I really think is amazing. And also I am one that battles with infertility as a woman. I've been married for almost 9 years now in March. And I have this story of battling with infertility, and I don't have children right now. And so when I was reading her story and I found out that she did in vitro fertilization, that was also encouraging for me, because you don't really hear necessarily a lot of people on big stages really exposing the fact that that was something that they struggled with or they had to battle through. And so that was also very impactful for me. And then the last thing that I will say that was really impactful for me from that book, Becoming, was also her sharing about her journey of being willing to take a leap. where she was on a certain path as an attorney, but she was making different moves and she was taking different leaps. And so I'm all about being willing to take leaps into what it is. So it was a leap becoming an author for me. It was a leap becoming an educator, changing course direction. It was a leap becoming a life coach. It was a leap creating courses that I hope people would decide to sign up for, but I was willing to be courageous enough to take those leaps. So there was so much of her story that really just was so empowering and so impactful for me that I would love to just be face to face with her and have the opportunity to share with her my heart. And I'm sure she would be able to offer so much more insight, even though the book is quite long, but I'm sure she would be able to offer so much more from her journey being the woman that she is today.
Chavon, thank you. You're just getting rave reviews in the chat. Thank you for your energy. You're inspiring. This is just fantastic. I'm looking at the clock, though. I know we got to wrap up our 30-minute session here, but I just want to thank you so much for joining us. This has been so fun, and just appreciate you getting so back involved, with Wesleyan and just offering all this incredible insight. You really do have an impactful journey, and thanks for sharing it. I want to let everyone know that our next event will be on March 10th, and we're going to hear from guest Darrell Seneca. I don't know how to pronounce his last name just yet. My apologies, but he's a 2007 graduate. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him just yet, but I can't wait to. But he's the owner of the local Deadline Brewing Project, and he's going to be taking us on a tour of his brewery while talking about his homemade brews and being a small business owner during the pandemic. So this should be a lot of fun. Again, March 10th at noon. So thank you all so much. We'll go ahead and end the call, but if there's anyone that